So on behalf of Heart Support Australia, welcome to our next Heart Support Connect episode. It is obviously something that we do in collaboration with the Solve CHD team. And today we have an amazing speaker with us this evening, and that is Dr. Helen Parker, who is a accredited practicing dietitian, joining us to give a fantastic talk tonight called Benefits of the Little Things, Nutritional Tidbits to Improve Heart Health. So looking at the little things that we can change in our diets that can make a big difference for our heart health. Bit of an introduction about Helen. She has an impressive background, if you ask me. But her PhD has focused on the effects of omega-3 polyunsaturated fatty acids on cardiovascular risk and liver fat. Her current research seeks to make health accessible to all, including group education programs for young women with obesity, smartphone apps for secondary prevention of heart disease, and upskilling hospital and cardiac rehabilitation staff in nutrition screening to ensure nutritional needs are identified and can be met during hospital and outpatient clinics. Dr. Helen Parker teaches in the School of Health Sciences, training the next generation of allied health professional researchers and clinicians. And today she will talk about the little things in our diet that can improve our heart health. Thanks for being with us this evening, Helen. And on behalf of Heart Support Australia, thank you for being our guest speaker tonight for our Heart Support Connect series. So impressive background. I think it's a very topical subject. I think people struggle with diet and nutrition. As an exercise professional myself, we always think exercise is the most important, but needless to say that diet is actually the biggest one, really. So unfortunately, you do have me live on that recording that has admitted that. So, but we're very looking forward to your presentation this evening. So I'll hand over the reins to you now so you can take over the presentation, and we'll go from there. Don't forget to unmute.
Mute now. And we're going to present from the main slide, correct? Hope so. And
Nearly coming up. Bit of a delay.
options, laser pointer. All right, you can see a little, hopefully a laser pointer there. And my internet connection is unstable. Thank you, Vodafone. Well, fingers crossed.
It's coming now.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so we've had very interesting internet connectivity in my suburb lately. We're going to have to find a provider, I think, because it's not doing it. So hopefully it'll go okay today. So yeah, we'll see how we go. So thank you so much for having me present today. I'm very excited to be here. I'm going to see how I move the slides across. Okay, here we go. So before I start, and ask me where I work, and hopefully where you come from too, I'd like to pay my respects to the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples who have cared and continue to care for country on which the University of Sydney campuses stand. I pay respects to elders past, present and emerging, and extend that respect to any Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander peoples joining us today or later online on the recording. I'd also like to thank Solve CHD Network and Heart Support Australia for the opportunity to be here today, and for their partnership that's making these Heart Connect webinars happen. It's a really exciting time to be working in heart health in Australia. So today, this is a bit of an outline, very short outline of what we'll cover in the Heart Connect webinar today. I must admit, I've tried to squeeze in about 35 minutes worth of stuff into 25 minutes, so we'll see how we go. But hopefully by the end of this session, you'll have at least one thing that you can choose to do to improve your heart health moving forward. So, nutrition. I'm sure you've come here with an interest in nutrition. Nutrition is a huge and varying thing that joins us all, that both sustains and frames our lives. Everyone lives in all sorts of different ways, but one can't survive long without ingesting nutrients, and most of us do that by eating food. So nutrition encompasses the foods and the nutrients that we eat, the diets that we attempt, the adequacy of nutritional intake, our requirements that change across the life course, our choices, social and cultural aspects of eating, and dietary patterns that we follow. So it's a huge interconnected web of things. So just as we start here, I just want you to spend a moment thinking about what food means to you. So firstly, do you think about food at all? Some do, some don't. How do you approach the meals in the day? your snacks, the hot or cold beverages that punctuate your weekday, your weekend day, evenings, celebrations, the treats that you have, the treats that are so regular that they're not really treat foods anymore, but they're everyday foods, social engagements, living out your culture or religion, catching up with friends and family. So food will often take a central piece in every single one of those things. Food is the glue that binds many social, cultural, and religious functions, and the thread passing through our day that sustains our bodies and our lives and gives much pleasure and delight, but also, as we know, a lot of challenge, a lot of compromise, and it influences our health and happiness in a myriad of ways. So, a lot of stuff to cover. We'll pick just some parts of it today. In the past, and currently in a bit different way, nutrition scientists talk a lot about individual nutrients. So we have our macronutrients that provide energy as they're burned in our bodies. We have our micronutrients that are familiar to us as vitamins and minerals. And we have the other bits and pieces that we need that aren't specifically nutrients per se, but we need them anyway to survive well. Things like water and dietary fiber. The reason why nutrition started looking at individual nutrients and has done for a long time is because in the past, of course, this is where nutrition began, to try and ensure the survival of humans by providing enough nutrients. So we needed to identify for each nutrient where it came from, what it does, how much was enough to survive and to thrive. And more recently, nutrition research has come to focus on the fact that we eat food, not individual nutrients. And we're having now to understand how to ensure survival when we have too much or not the right kind of nutrition. And in terms of chronic disease, the whole of the diet is what's going to be most important to people here listening today. So we'll talk all about diets today. So apart from being the glue that binds so many of society's functions, food and nutrition have important impacts on the risk of disease and importantly, death from disease. So this lovely graph here comes from the Global Burden of Disease study looking at dietary impacts on death across the world. So it took data, death statistics from a whole bunch of different countries and looked at the nutritional impacts related to those deaths. So on the left in the colourful section, you can see the deaths attributable to each dietary factor split up by country type. So you got your high income countries in the orange and sort of peachy orangey color, and the lower income countries in the bluish colors. So you can see that for each dietary factor, there are some similarities and some differences between countries and how those dietary factors influenced risk of death or death in their country. On the right-hand side in the red colors, you can see the number of thousands of deaths attributable to each dietary factor split up by disease type. And so cardiovascular disease, which is what we are primarily interested in today, is in the dark red. So you can see big numbers of cardiovascular disease influenced by diet, then diabetes, then cancer, then other causes. Really is that every component of diet is important for preventing death from even just these few chronic diseases. So you might have, a great diet in terms of fish or fiber intake, but if it's high in sodium, you're still looking at millions of deaths from cardiovascular disease. So my 3-year-old is currently wanting at my door. Anyway, hopefully grandpa will come soon. So looking at cardiovascular risk and some of the different things that can influence cardiovascular risk, and then the various nutritional impacts that influence those things, you can see that nutrition hits a lot of different bits and pieces. Christian, you mentioned that exercise is really important. It absolutely is, but I also read an article, which I was trying to find today, but I had no internet. You can't outrun a bad diet. And so here are just some of the risk factors for cardiovascular disease and some of the nutritional factors related to those. You can see a couple of commonalities there. So sodium comes up a lot, saturated fat comes up a lot, and things that are a combination of nutrition and exercise like body fat and positive energy balance. So excess energy for what you require, that sort of thing. What you see here is that there's a lot of beneficial effects from fruit and veg, and that'll come up a lot when we look at dietary patterns later today. What isn't listed here but falls into that field of satiety, bone health, muscle health, and therefore the capacity to perform exercise and keep healthy, well-functioning muscles and stave off gains in body fat are low-processed dairy products like milk, cheese, and yogurt, and whole grains. So lots of things that impact cardiovascular risk in a number of different ways. And so we're looking a lot here at diet quality. And so that will come up in the look at dietary patterns we have today. And the idea of excess nutrition versus enough nutrition. The challenging one to I guess, find the balance. So what guidelines do we have for nutrition? So put simply, we could look to the science writer and Professor Michael Pollan's work boiled down to this short statement on how to eat for good health. Eat food, not too much, mostly plants. And he later added these later, of many different colors. So if that's the one thing you get out of today, it's the theme that really spans a lot of the different dietary patterns we look at as we work through this presentation. So in terms of Australian dietary guidelines, they're currently under review. So we will have some new or updated dietary guidelines in the next 12 to 24 months. But the ones we currently have are here. So achieve and maintain a healthy weight, choose amounts of nutritional foods to meet your energy needs, be physically active. Guideline 2, enjoy a wide variety of nutritious foods from the 5 food groups every day. Limit intake of foods containing saturated fat, added salt, added sugars, and alcohol. And you can see how this one really links well with cardiovascular risk. Encourage, support, and promote breastfeeding. And finally, care for your food, prepare and store it safely. So the 2 I'm going to focus on today are these 2. Enjoying a wide variety of nutritious foods and limiting intake of foods containing those particular nutrients. So firstly, what are the 5 food groups? You might remember this picture as a pyramid some years back, but for the last decade or so, it's been a plate image, and the relative size of each piece represents the relative contribution or intake of each food group. So for example, with your vegetables, including different types and colors, and legumes and beans, that should form quite a substantial part of our diet, according to the research that Australia's put all together. There's fruit down here. You've got your grain foods of all different types of grains, focusing on the high fiber varieties or the whole grain varieties. Lean meats, poultry, fish, eggs, tofu, and seeds and legumes and beans come into this one too. And then our dairy products there. So the Australian dietary guidelines focus on lower fat products for dairy, but I'm going to challenge that later on. And when it talks about how many serves a day, there's a whole bunch of resources on the Eat for Health website to teach you about serving sizes, or to help you work out what serving size looks like. So half a cup of cooked veg, or 1 cup of salad veg, or a medium piece of fruit, and then what that looks like in your own diet. So I'm going to talk about guideline 3, which is limit discretionary foods, just briefly, sort of. There are a few individual points under this guideline. And this one's mostly about limiting discretionary foods. And I say discretionary because they're not required in the diet. They perform no vital function except perhaps enjoyment of social occasions like birthday cakes. For the components that make up cooked foods, swapping over to healthier versions is what they're going for here. As you can see, our first subpoint is limiting intake of foods high in saturated fats, such as many biscuits, cakes, pies, pastry, etc., and to swap to healthier alternatives. So as you'll see, some of these things they're suggesting to swap from are things that you might use every day or every couple of days or so. So for example, if you eat sandwiches and you put margarine on your sandwich, or you perhaps used to put butter, you might change to margarine, or an avocado spread, or you might use extra virgin olive oil instead of using butter in your cooking, or palm oil, or things like that. So the swaps that you can do, and this is one of those features where if that's one of the swaps you can make, that's one of those small changes you can make, that's a reasonable one to think about. So the second point under this guideline 3 is limiting intake of foods and drinks containing added salt. And so this one, I think, if you've been in the cardiovascular or heart,
that's a good thing.
Is it sharing?
It is about to load. So yeah, Sarah, we're on. Perfect.
Oh, man.
Go for it.
All right, quick. We'll speed through this then. Okay, so sodium, you've got your higher and lower sodium there. Think about what your portion size is if the serving size doesn't fit to what you normally do. Like that, so that'll be better. And then the last thing I had here. Okay, so salt at the table, that's fine. And here, if you're reading food labels and you're looking for things that are called salt, here are all the different types of things called salt. So even if it says Himalayan pink salt, which of course is a very beautiful salt, it's still salt. It's super tricky actually sometimes to find low sodium products. So bread, for instance, it's a staple for many people, but it also has a high sodium content because salt is an excellent preservative. So one of those tricky things, I guess. Okay, limiting intake of foods containing added sugars, such as confectionery, sugar-sweetened soft drink and cordials, fruit drinks, vitamin waters, and interestingly, so the marketing around these is very interesting. Of course, vitamin waters being sort of promoted as a healthy product, in that they have vitamins in them, which sure they do, but they also have a lot of sugar. And so it can be quite challenging when the marketing gets going. If you choose to drink alcohol, limit the intake. So that could look like choose smaller serving size when you're pouring yourself or purchasing a beverage. It could look like choosing some alcohol-free days per week. And so these are little things that you can choose to do. But of course, for women who are pregnant, planning a pregnancy or breastfeeding, not drinking is the safest option for your baby. So I mentioned fat in dairy. Are we concerned? Well, yes and no. So the dietary guidelines say yes. My internet connection is still unstable. Gosh, let's fingers crossed. And the basis of that argument is nutritional density per 1,000 kilojoules. So if you can take out a bit of fat, then you've got a fewer kilojoules in there, and therefore you have a better nutritional density. However, for the evidence on obesity and cardiovascular disease, we don't really care. So dairy intake may reduce the risk of heart attack. That's what it seems to show. But more importantly, it didn't seem to make a difference if you had regular fat versus low fat on the risk of obesity or cardiovascular disease. So it kind of comes down to what your preferences are, how much dairy forms a part of your diet, and maybe whether if you, for example, eat a lot of higher fat dairy products, so cheeses have a lot of fat in them, whether or not you eat enough of them to go, well, maybe I should choose a lower fat variety. And I've just put it down the bottom there in the blue boxes, the percent fat for skim or low fat milk versus full fat milk. So again, if it's 3.5% fat versus 1.5% fat, if you're drinking a litre, yeah, that might make a difference. But if you're only drinking a cup or 2 or 3 serves a day as you're meant to do, it won't make a huge difference. And, you know, maybe regular fat might be better than low fat if it gives you better satiety perhaps, or better mouth feel, or perhaps the nutrient matrix of the whole food is more important sometimes. So again, it depends on your preferences. And that brings me to dietary patterns, which is the key thing I was going to get covered today, followed by the small things we can change. So dietary patterns, as I said, we eat food, right? And the dietary pattern is the complete pattern of food and beverage intake, the quantities, proportions, variety, or combinations of different foods, drinks, and nutrients in the diet, and the frequency with which they are habitually consumed. So some examples of some dietary patterns related to heart disease risk. There are many more, and we'll go through some of them here. So the Western diet it's not a recommended diet. It's a general description for an American or Australian or an English diet. And it's a lot of red meat, processed meat, processed and artificially sweetened foods, higher salt foods, prepackaged foods, and refined grain foods, and eating less of the fruit, veg, fish, legumes, and that sort of thing. It also is often characterized by larger portion sizes, higher calories, and excess sugar. So I couldn't find a nice picture of that to put in here, so I put the pyramid instead, because the pictures all had just deep fried foods, and that's not the entire Western diet. I guess if you think about what is in your pantry, and then like I noticed I was looking in my pantry today, I was like, oh, there's a fair few crisps down there, and there's some biscuits up here. I'm like, oh, it probably looks a bit like a Western diet in there. So I'm hoping my fridge looks better. Oh yes, and the Western diet is it's linked to the development of raised blood lipids, insulin resistance, type 2 diabetes, and that pro-inflammatory diet. So it's speeding up that process of atherosclerosis, which is the plug, I guess, that forms inside those arteries and causes a heart attack. Now, the Mediterranean diet, if you've been listening about the traps, you've probably heard a fair few people mention the Mediterranean diet. Like the title says, it's based on the traditional foods of countries surrounding the Mediterranean Sea. So think about what you would eat if you live near the sea. Lots of, I guess, where's the fish there? Yeah, fish and seafood's the end of that first line. But it's heavily focused on vegetables and fruits and whole grains. And if you think about it, it kind of fits the dietary guidelines that we've already got in Australia, but in, I guess, a holistic kind of way where you can kind of look at a recipe book from Greek food or from Spanish food or something, and you've pretty much got it there. So if you're looking to, I guess, add Mediterranean type things to your diet, that's a good place to start. If you're not sure where to begin, or you don't know what sort of recipes to use, using a Greek recipe book or a Spanish recipe book, or perhaps even a French or Italian one. So more of those veggies and fruits, very heavily on that. Extra virgin olive oil is a key feature of that diet as well. And there's been a bunch of different studies looking at how well the Mediterranean diet reduces risk of heart disease or that sort of thing. I did a whole lot of strong thing to do. There we go. It has been shown to reduce the risk of excess weight gain. So maybe not like weight loss, but reduce the risk of excess weight gain. In the PREDIMED study, it may help reduce abdominal fat gain as opposed to a standard reduced fat diet, which is pretty exciting in the end. And what you can see here is that if someone drinks alcohol, they're advised to have moderate or lowish consumption and choosing red wine rather than beers and things like that. So a couple of images to help sort of describe what that diet looks like. Yeah, lots of vegetables, fish products, that sort of thing. A diet that's been around in the cardiovascular space for a long time is the DASH diet, or dietary approaches to stop hypertension. salt foods is one of the key features of this diet. But again, it's focused on vegetables and fruits and whole grains. They've chosen to specify low-fat dairy here, fish, beans, legumes, that sort of thing, and limiting those discretionary type foods. Okay. Hopefully my connection stays. It's saying it's unstable still. And limiting sugar-sweetened beverages and things like that. Again, this diet led to reductions in blood pressure of over 5 mils of mercury, which is very exciting. We get excited when there's any reduction in blood pressure of even 3 mils of mercury. So 5 mils is great in systolic blood pressure, and 3 mils of mercury in diastolic blood pressure after only 8 weeks following the diet. It's a very short intervention to get quite a substantial gain in blood pressure reduction. So that's very exciting. And again, it's that emphasis on vegetables and fruit and whole grains. The American Heart Association diet looks very similar to those previous 2 diets. So again, wide variety of fruit and vegetables, whole grain products, healthy sources of protein, so lean protein, plant protein, non-tropical vegetable oils, minimally processed foods. And I thought I'd put a little table in here just to make it a bit more, comparable. So our Western diet, you can see limited fruit and veg, or perhaps refined and cooked in fat veg, refined grains, red meat, processed meat, higher fat, higher saturated fat, and a fair bit of discretionary foods. And I say this because our Australian Health Survey, which admittedly there's one going on right now, so we'll have some updated data in a couple of years' time, which I'm very excited about. Apparently 30% of energy intake comes from discretionary foods and beverages in Australia, which is a lot of our energy. So if we changed any part of that, that would make a big difference. The Med diet is, as I said, heavily focused on fruit and veg and whole grains and fish and extra virgin olive oil. The DASH diet, so the hypertension specific or hypertension targeted diet, again, focused heavily on fruit and veg, whole grains, fish and lean meats. And the American Heart Association diet, very, very similar format there, specifying, legumes and specifying mostly plant-based protein sources. So that's a bit of an overview of those diets. And I just want to say there are so many other traditional diets that you could possibly find around the world. Again, so many more than is on this page right now. And a fair amount of study has been done on these different diets of First Nation peoples across the globe. And in pretty much all cases, the traditional diets gave adherents a low risk of chronic disease, cancer, and death, including heart disease. And this really shouldn't be that surprising, given those First Nations people of any country were there for, hundreds, if not thousands of years before explorers came and new settlers came from far off countries bringing their own often detrimental dietary patterns. And reading briefly into some of these dietary patterns, they're mostly characterized by, significant quantities of fiber, lots of plant-based foods, and in those places where plants don't grow that well, a lot of seafood, so fish and seafood, rather than that Western dietary pattern that would feature red meat and high saturated fat meats if someone wasn't into eating plant foods. So that's, you could, if you really want to follow a diet, if you can find a cultural diet that fits you, that's fabulous. But in the end, for many individuals, to change a diet large scale is really a bit hard. If you thrive on big changes, go for it. But if not, what other options are out there for reducing cardiovascular risk? Can I meet you halfway? And can little changes help too? And that's what I want to talk about now. So what is little change and how can it help? So little changes are things like healthier swaps within that same dietary pattern that you already follow. And the benefits of this are that it's already familiar. It's very easy to do. When you're at the supermarket, at your choice of store, you purchase this one, not that one, and you keep that one in your pantry or your fridge or whatever, and use that preferentially. Benefits of taking things slow. So I know that some people, weight management is one of those key sort of features of reducing your cardiovascular risk, and people often focus a lot on that. And people often want results really fast. However, there are benefits of taking things slow and making small changes. So firstly, they're a bit more, you can maintain them a bit more easily because they're not vastly different from what you're already used to. But there's also physiological benefits too. So for example, when you lose weight, you don't just lose fat, you lose muscle as well and bone mineral density. And so if you take it slow, then you're less likely to lose those important components of your body, and you're more likely to have, a better body composition when you achieve your weight loss. One of these little changes you can do is learning how to choose well from within a food group, or perhaps a food court or a restaurant menu. And so some of the things that you might do are things like looking at a scheme. So you've got your health star rating on packaged foods in Australia. That being said, non-packaged foods don't have a health star rating. So, your banana or your apple, perfectly healthy, but no health star rating. The Heart Foundation tick or the GI symbol, So with some of these things like the Heart Foundation tick, the GI symbol, companies have to pay money to have that tested and then done. So if it doesn't have a tick, it doesn't necessarily mean it's a worse food, but you'd have to read the label to find that out. So again, it's within category. You could be nutrient focused. So for example, if blood pressure is your thing, you might want to look at sodium on the labels. If lipids or cholesterol are your thing, then maybe saturated fat or added sugar in any of those cases. Or you could look at cooking method focused. So for example, when you've got options available to you in a food court, or if you're flicking through a recipe book, steaming and grilling and sort of boiling and roasting without adding much extra fats and things is going to be a lot better than having deep fried foods where if the oil isn't changed regularly enough, you're running the risk of eating trans fats as well, which is another story for another time. There are other considerations to taking it to little changes. So I mentioned before sustainability of dietary practices. So the best diet you can follow is the one that you can actually sustain, the one that you'll stick to. So if you make little changes within the same diet you're already following, then it's going to be culturally okay for you, socially okay for you. Perhaps you might need a few more skills, or maybe you've already got the skills and small changes might be more acceptable and fit in well with your existing diet. A couple of Q&A here. Yes, you can use frozen vegetables if you're looking to add vegetables, and yes, you can use canned vegetables. Aim for the no added salt varieties where you can. If you're time poor, you can batch cook and freeze portions, and that's coming to one of the little things you can do in a few slides time. Or if you've got ready-to-eat meals from the freezer section at the supermarket, they often come with not quite enough vegetables, so add a few veg as well. So keep some ready-made freezer meals and some little packets of vegetables in your freezer at the same time, and you've got some really healthy meals right there and then. And where do you go if you need support or if you want some skills acquisition? Because I've members of my family, some of them are retiring at the moment and realizing, oh, I don't know how to cook that. And so where do you go? So depends on where you live and what you've got available to you, of course, but you might have a community college nearby or nearish by, and they'll often have cooking classes. They might have a type of cuisine like Thai or something else, but you can go and learn some of the skills there in a nice supportive situation. You can choose to visit a dietitian or a nutritionist in person or via telehealth. So dietitians, of course, are the ones who are going to look at medical nutrition therapy, whereas nutritionists can have any amount of training, not the specified dietetics training, but they may well have some really good cooking classes and ways of finding ways to eat well. And you can go online to find recipes from the Heart Foundation, Diabetes Australia and things. Now, I know I've sort of kind of run out of time, but I have a few more slides to go. Reading food labels. So here, am I still screen sharing? I hope so. Yeah, so some of the things you might be interested in are things like the fat content. So saturated fat per 100 grams is going to be there, total fat's there. Your sodium's down the bottom here. Ingredients listed in order from greatest to least contribution to the food. I'm going to leave that one there. If you want to look for it later, there's a Crunch and Sip is one of those programs they have in schools and early childhood education settings here. So you can hunt that down, or really anywhere. So what can you do about your own diet? So first we need to find if or where is the problem. So examine your own diet. You can do this yourself if you're feeling brave, but you can always ask a dietitian for help. Many private health insurance companies will cover some part of the consult fee for a dietitian, or if you have a chronic disease and you get an enhanced primary care plan from your GP, you can have them add dietetics to that as one or two of your 5 visits in the year. So you could do it in a simple way, you could do it a detailed way. Keep a food record for a week. This has many benefits in that you can find out why you're eating certain things. So maybe it's mood driven, maybe it's something else. Tally up your average number of serves per day for each food group, and then see how well it matches the dietary guidelines or not. You can also ask a dietitian if you want to have help. And then, regardless of what your numbers come out at there, from experience, I can tell you that most commonly people have areas of improvement in vegetables, legumes and beans, dairy, and discretionary foods and beverages. So it might be easy just to target those. But now what is one small thing you can do? So I've listed up a bunch of things here of little tiny changes you can make. You could pick one, you could pick two. Depending on your personality, you might want to pick all of these. But I recommend choosing one thing to do and keeping track of doing it until it becomes a habit. Then choose another thing to add to your week. And so therefore building up these little habits of one thing, there you go, to lead towards a healthier, like a healthy lifestyle. So here's what it could look like. So the left-hand column was have vegetables for a snack. So it could be a carrot in your lunch bag. It could be a potato, cherry, tomatoes. If you're swapping to low salt alternatives, read nutrition labels and choose the lower salt option. I've got a picture of soy sauce there. The less salt version has about 45% less sodium than the full sodium version. So I know that soy sauce might not be a huge part of your diet. For some people, it will be. And if you're doing a lot of cooking from that particular type of cuisine, you might find yourself using a lot of soy sauce. I'd also say that in a lot of recipes, they have a lot of soy sauce and you don't need that much to still get the same flavor. Roster a legume dish for dinner once a week. So search the Heart Foundation website for easy legume recipes. And yes, canned legumes totally count. And they're much less frightening for non-legume eaters. I'm coming to legumes. Bring your lunch to work even once a week. So if you're going to something regularly, bring your lunch. So leftovers are fine. You might have, if you've got no idea at all and you're like, oh, I just can't think of what to have for lunch, a tin of tuna, a supermarket salad, and a piece of bread with cheese makes a perfect lunch as well. Eating 2 pieces of fruit a day. So bring an apple and a banana in your lunch bag. Apples travel very well. Bananas can get squishy, so eat them earlier. And also dried fruit also travels very well. Institute an alcohol-free day each week. So select a day or a couple of days. Our guidelines suggest 2 alcohol-free days a week, but the more the better, I guess. So select them and mark them off, and so that you've sort of set them as your goal. And if you are drinking alcohol, have a glass of water between each beverage to sort of slow you down and perhaps in the end reduce alcohol intake. Add an extra serve of veg at dinner. So you might chop up a carrot or half a cup of broccoli per person. You can microwave them. Again, that's a fine way of cooking if you want to. And you can also use frozen or those pre-cut vegetables, which they have at the supermarket, if you like. Boil an egg. I was speaking to a friend recently. She does cooking demonstrations online, and she said that some people don't know how to boil an egg. So I thought I'd put it up there. 5 minutes in boiling water for a runny yolk. You might have your own way, but that one certainly works. Eat with toast plus or minus avocado. Nice, solid breakfast. Eat any fish twice a week. So again, tinned fish counts. So I just said, on Thursday when you've run out of ideas, have your tin tuna then, or have your, baked fish on a Sunday or whatever. You might have yogurt on your cereal to add dairy to your day. This one, eating at the table, this is about the social behavior of eating and also being conscious of eating. So if you just mindlessly eat, you often don't feel as satisfied as if you are conscious of, use a knife and fork, eat at a proper table. And there's that social aspect as well, which is not necessarily about the nutrients and how they behave in your body, but there's more to eating than just the food. And then pick a new dish per month. You might think, why can't I do it one per week? Of course, if you can do it one per week, go for gold. But I find it can be mentally challenging. So if you go for one a month, then it's an easier goal to tick off and you'll feel that satisfaction of having achieved it. Try out different herbs and spices for fun. And if you like the dish, add it to your repertoire. And other bits and pieces you might think about using technology to help you with behavior change. So you might have smartphone apps, which is part of the work that I do at the moment in my research part of my life. You might use them for reminders. You might use them for an electronic shopping list. You might track your food with an app or track your lifestyle, so physical activity and nutrition with an app, if you feel keen. If you've got specific goals, that often helps. There's some ongoing research in plant-derived versus animal-derived protein and whether the balance and where is that line to balance plant and animal protein. Time-restricted eating, this is from the work that I've been reading in obesity, which is it's related to heart disease risk, but it can also help if you're finding you're overeating a lot, you're never quite satisfied. Time-restricted eating is one of those ways, just like the 5-2 type, fasting type diets, not fasting, but low energy intake diets can help you regain your idea of satiety and how much you need to eat. It's an interesting thing the way it does that. And then perhaps this is very new research, looking at adjusting the timing or the weighting of the caloric intake in the day. So having a bigger breakfast, a medium lunch, and then a smaller dinner is one of those things that we're looking at the moment to see if it helps with weight management. So last things, takeaway messages, not food, is to choose one thing. There are lots of things put up there. Whichever one sings out to you, choose that one thing and make it a habit. Then choose another. This point I put up here is because we are so inundated with diets, with fad diets, doctor-supported diets, celebrity chef diets, and more. And everyday food nutrition are becoming muddied and more difficult to understand. So be sensible if you're going to follow a specific diet, whatever that is. And again, if nothing else, eat food, real food, not too much, mostly plants of lots of different colors. And if you want to go and find Michael Pollan's work, it's fun and easy to read. So yeah, if you choose to change your diet, try for something nearish to what you're comfortable with, and not one that requires you to make large scale changes or cut out food groups. As these will probably be unsustainable and likely result in a suboptimal nutrition status. So the best diet is one you can stick to. I just popped up a couple of resources. I know you can't click on those links right now, but feel free to hunt some of those things down or take a screenshot or something if you'd like to. And of course, that Heart Foundation website is always there for you to provide lots of recipes and things. And I'd just like to say thank you very much. So I will stop sharing there, and I will make you, where have you gone, Christian?
Over here.
How do I make you host? There you go. Okay. Yes, I do.
Perfect. Now. All right. Well, thank you very much for that insightful presentation. I think we'll have a few questions. I'll start off with two because we'll see how it goes. But I think it's there's a lot there to unpack. Diet's a big one. It can be scary for people. Trying to prepare food and all these type of things and trying to eat healthy. I will say, what are your thoughts? Also, I mean, you covered some really interesting points around being an Italian slow food type of movement, concept of eating and appreciating food, eating at a table. So I realize in Australia, people like to eat in front of their desk and eat and eat and eat, and don't actually realize that they, don't even enjoy what they're eating. And so actually going away and separating food with, this type of lifestyle instead of work, instead of, watching TV, can kind of break it up and actually appreciate food, can, make you be more appreciative. I guess one thing is around portion sizes. I know that we see a lot of people that eat quite large amounts in Australia. And one of the biggest things we had with diet was trying to get people to kind of cut down on portion sizes, give tips around that. So happy to hear your thoughts around that. And then two, my question was around intermittent fasting. This is a big one that's been around for a while now, something that we did promote when we did our large randomized studies, and we found it worked quite well because I think it was easy for people to say, eat between 12 and 8, eat between the 8-hour window and you get by. I'm happy to hear your thoughts about those two questions.
Cool. Thanks so much. Big questions. Okay, so portion size. Let's start with that one. And mindful eating. So yes, portion sizes are often too large. People, I guess, there's a few things going on there. So there's the speed of eating, there's doing other things while you're eating. So eating when you're distracted, so whether you're at your desk at work or in the car or watching telly, it often means that you'll keep eating beyond when your tummy would have normally said, oh, actually, I'm kind of full. So one really easy change to make is just say, look, my rule is I'm not going to eat when I'm doing other stuff like that. I'm going to eat at a table. I'm going to eat with someone else if possible. And what I find really hard about nutrition is that everyone wants to have black and white rules. I totally agree, but it's so hard to make black and white rules when it's such a gray thing. There are so many different facets of nutrition and why do you eat? Because of course you need to eat, right? But when you choose to eat, you can make some rules about that. But yeah, I really like the idea of eating with people and eating at a table to make you more conscious of it. You can do exercises to help with mindful eating even on your own. So if you're, for example, some people, some of the clients with obesity that I've spoken to before, they have a fear of food or they just wolf it down and don't really know what's going in. So one thing you can do is get a sultana and put it on your tongue, and then you just have to wait, and you have to not swallow it. You can feel it with your tongue, you can smell it, you can taste it, and you spend time understanding your eating. And it's one little exercise you can do. You could just also do that with the regular food that you eat. So at dinner time, appreciate, I think people talk about this as tea as well. So appreciate the tea, appreciate the food. So look at the food on your plate, enjoy the colors, the textures, take time. I know an old one was, chew your food 20 times. Another one is to have water with your meals. If you just can't eat less, then try and change the energy density of the food. So perhaps by adding more, I guess if you look at any diabetes resources, they have free vegetables. So things like green leafy veg, carrots, things like that, broccoli, where there's lots of nutrients, but not much energy. So they fill you up in terms of there's lots of fluid in there, lots of fiber in there, lots of space, but not much energy. And so if you're struggling with portion size, but you want to sort of, I guess, reduce your energy intake, that's one way of doing it. So that's portion size and eating with people. Intermittent fasting. Interesting one. Okay. So it makes it a very, so you've got time restricted feeding, which is eating between certain times of day, so 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. or whatever times you choose. There are a variety of different studies looking at how long the gap needs to be. And then you've got intermittent fasting in the sense of very, very low energy on certain days a week. So the 5-2 diet was promoting that sort of idea where you have very, very low energy intake on 2 days a week, and the other days you eat whatever you feel like eating. However, what they found was people who were having those 2 very low energy days were then not eating as much on their eat whatever days. So the fear was, oh, I'll just go back to gorging on everything because I'll be hungry after my fasting day or my low energy day. But in the end, what happened was people were more in touch with their satiety cues, their hunger cues, which they had sort of overridden for many years. And then you have intermittent fasting where it's, water fasting on certain days, which I don't know, I'd find that hard to concentrate, but hey, it's horses for courses. So if that works for you and you can ensure you've got a nutritionally complete diet the rest of the time, then go for gold. And that's the thing, nutrition, like all these diets, this one might work for you, but that one works for someone else. And as long as it's working for you, then that's all good.
Happy with that.
Yeah,
I think,
cool.
look, I think it captures it nicely, and I appreciate that. I'm happy for anyone to ask a question if they like. There was someone here about the slides. This presentation is recorded and actually goes up onto our YouTube channel, which you can actually access through our website. So that should be up within the next 24 hours. So you're more than welcome to access this presentation then. If there are any questions, we do allow consumers or allied health professionals to jump in and ask a question. Understand we've already gone a bit over time, but I'll allow a few more minutes for this. So if you did want to jump in, feel free to unmute. And here's your opportunity to ask Helen something that might be on your mind. So I think we're going to takers.
Me.
Oh, we got one. Faye, there we go.
Always me. I'm always asking questions. Sorry. Olive oil is getting really expensive right now. Just wanted to know what's a good alternative for cooking with it, and just using as a general vegetable oil.
Yeah, I noticed that too, Faye. Oh man, it was on sale this week in my local store and it was all gone. Yeah, so anything that's going to be like a vegetable oil that's not further specified, because they'll often have odd oils in there. Grapeseed oil comes up a fair bit as being pretty good. Canola, but yeah, olive oil is going to be the best one you get. An interesting thing about olive oil is that, so I think I put the cobram oil in there. Anyway, there's export quality isn't necessarily the best quality. So I know you can get international olive oils coming on the Australian shelves, and I guess they're going to be better than choosing a vegetable oil not further specified. But they're also the ones that the country of origin is willing to let go. I don't know. I guess I just try and buy olive oil when on special. But yeah, so canola and grapeseed oil and things like that. They seem quite good. And again, it depends what you want the oil for. I guess I was thinking about flavor just then. Olive oil has a low boiling point. And I've got some comments in the thinking it's great seed oil good for cooking. Yes, I've seen it used well for cooking. Olive oil has a low smoke point. It does, but from what I've seen in the research, it doesn't seem to it's not a problem when it comes to like oxidizing and things like that. So even though it has a low smoke point, it's actually okay. And I don't know the science behind why that is. But thank you for those comments in the chat there.
All right. Well, look, I think that's it. No other questions. Helen, on behalf of Heart Support Australia, thank you very much. It was a fantastic presentation, very well attended, and I do believe that this will circulate quite well amongst our groups and get a bit of traction online on our YouTube channels with some views. So very insightful. It is a very important part, not just heart health, but health in general. I think people do struggle with diet and nutrition, far more than the exercise and physical activity, really. So I do thank you for providing that, very important input today to everybody who's going to be watching this.
Dr. Christian. Thank you everyone for coming. It's really exciting to see everyone here. Thank you.
All right. Well, everyone have a nice night. Thank you very much. Stay tuned. We'll have some notices come out over the next week around our next presentation in September, again in collaboration with the Solve CHD team. Dr. Joseph Weddell, and we'll be talking around some cognitive changes associated with heart disease, and something quite interesting there with his PhD background. So stay tuned for more information, and we'll go from there. So thank you very much. Have a nice night, everyone, and we'll speak soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you.